A Thursday grocery run, 2 suitcases in my living room, and a daughter-in-law who thinks family is a key to my front door. She smirked. "You should thank the real owner." I did out loud. Then her face drained of color. I raised a son alone, but I didn't raise a doormat. Tonight, the deed speaks for itself. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine came with legal documents and a stop work order, served at exactly the right temperature. My name is Margaret Whittaker Maggie, to those who've earned the right, and at 66. I thought I'd seen every shade of audacity life could paint. But standing in my own living room that Thursday afternoon, grocery bags cutting into my wrists, staring at 2 oversized suitcases parked next to my grandmother's coffee table, I realized I'd been wrong. Sienna stood between them like a general surveying conquered territory. Her platinum blonde hair caught the afternoon light streaming through my craftsman windows. Windows I'd spent 3 weekends restoring by hand after buying this house 12 years ago. She wore that particular smile of hers, the one that never quite reached her eyes, the one that made my teeth ache like biting into ice cream. "Oh, you're back," she said, not moving to help with the groceries. Her manicured fingers, French tips, always French tips, drummed against her phone screen. "Nathan's on his way. Traffic on the interstate." I set the bags down slowly, feeling that familiar twinge in my lower back from all those years of night shifts at Northline Courier Services, hauling packages that weighed more than they should have, working hours that left permanent shadows under my eyes. The house settled around us with a small creak, as if it too was bracing itself. "What's happening here?" "Sienna." I kept my voice level, though my pulse had started that uncomfortable flutter it did these days when stressed. Not heart trouble, just the body's way of keeping score after decades of single motherhood, double shifts, and too much instant coffee. She tilted her head, that smile widening. "We're staying for a bit. The contractors are starting work on our place tomorrow morning at 7. Dust everywhere. You know how it is." She said it like I'd been informed, consulted, asked. Like my home was an extension of theirs, a spare room they'd forgotten to use until now. "Contractors," I repeated, moving past her to set my purse on the hall table. My hall table, in my foyer, under the mirror I'd found at an estate sale in Boulder. "And you're here because, well, we can't stay there during renovations. Nathan said you wouldn't mind." She finally looked up from her phone, and something in her expression shifted, sharpened. "It's just a week. 2 at most." I felt the old familiar exhaustion settling into my bones, the kind that comes not from physical labor, but from emotional depletion. How many times had Nathan done this, volunteered my time, my space, my energy, without asking, the dog-sitting incidents, the quick stops to pick up mail that turned into dinner expectations, the assumptions that Mom would handle it, Mom would understand. Mom had nothing better to do in her empty house. "Where's Nathan?" I asked, though I already knew the pattern. Send Sienna ahead, let her establish the beachhead, then arrive after the awkwardness had peaked and I was too tired to fight. "I told you. Traffic. He had a site meeting run long." She wheeled one suitcase toward the guest room. "My quilting room now. Actually, though she wouldn't know that. Wouldn't care. We'll try not to disturb your routine too much." My routine. As if she knew anything about my routine. The morning coffee in my reading chair by the bay window, watching the Cardinals fight over the feeder, the Tuesday library volunteering, the Thursday grocery runs, timed perfectly to avoid crowds. The blessed quiet of a house that was finally, fully mine. "Did you ask the real owner of this house if you could stay?" The words came out sharper than intended, but I didn't soften them. Sienna stopped mid-wheel, turned back with an expression of practiced innocence that would have been convincing if I hadn't seen it deployed at 3 family dinners when she'd insulted my cooking, my decor, my quaint lifestyle. "I'm sorry," she said, though her tone suggested anything but. "You heard me. Did you get permission from the owner of this house?" That's when it happened. That smile again, but this time with teeth. She laughed, actually laughed a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Maggie." She shook her head, as if I were a child who'd said something precious but naive. "You should probably thank the real owner instead of making this difficult." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. The real owner. As if my name wasn't on every document, every tax bill, every mortgage payment I'd scratched and saved to make early. As if the 16 years I'd spent raising Nathan alone after Richard's heart attack hadn't earned me the right to say who crossed my threshold. The front door opened then, saving her from whatever response was building in my throat. Nathan walked in, heading straight for the kitchen without even a hello, and I heard the refrigerator door open. The casual possession of it, the assumption of access, the entire choreography of entitlement, it all suddenly felt suffocating. "Mom," he called out, mouth probably full of whatever he'd found. "Thanks for letting us crash. This renovation's going to be incredible. Sienna's turning the spare room into a content studio." I looked at my daughter-in-law, still standing there with that smirk, waiting for me to play the role I'd always played. The accommodating mother. The empty nest widow with too much space and too much time. "No," I said quietly. The word felt like a small revolution in my mouth. "No." Nathan emerged from the kitchen, water bottle in hand, my water bottle, the insulated one I'd bought for my morning walks. He looked between Sienna and me with that expression I recognized from his teenage years, the one that said Mom's being difficult again. "Come on, Mum. It's just a couple weeks." "You didn't ask," I said, standing my ground near the hall table, fingers gripping its edge for support. "You never ask." "I'm asking now." But he wasn't. Not really. He was informing, retroactively blessing a decision already made. The suitcases were here. Sienna had already mentally redecorated my quilting room. The assumption was complete. Sienna sighed dramatically, sinking onto my couch into my spot. Actually, the left corner, where the cushion had molded to my shape over years of evening reading. "Nathan, I told you we should have just gotten a hotel. Your mum clearly values her space more than family." The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been laughable if it hadn't worked so many times before. But I was tired of being maneuvered, tired of the emotional chess games where I always played defense. "A hotel would be perfect," I said evenly. "The Marriott downtown has a lovely extended stay rate." Nathan's face darkened. "Are you serious right now?" "We're family, Mom. Family helps each other." "When did you last help me?" "Nathan." The question escaped before I could stop it. Years of swallowed words suddenly demanding air. "When did you last call just to ask how I was visit without needing something? Remember my birthday without Facebook reminding you? That's not..." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I'm busy. Mom? We're both busy. Sienna's building her brand. I'm managing 3 construction sites." And I was busy too, I cut in, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Working 11 p.m. to 7 a. at Northline, then coming home to make your breakfast before school, busy attending every game, every parent conference, every crisis that needed solving. But I still made time for what mattered. Sienna stood, smoothing her designer jeans with practiced irritation. This is exactly what I mean about living alone too long. You get selfish, set in your ways. She looked at Nathan meaningfully. Some people forget what family means. The accusation burned, not because it was true, but because it was so perfectly backwards. I hadn't forgotten family. I'd been drowning in it, sacrificing for it, emptying myself for it until there was nothing left but the shell of a woman who'd forgotten her own needs existed. My reading chair, I said suddenly, pointing to the wingback by the window. That's where I sit every morning with my coffee. 7:15 sharp. The light hits the prism hanging there and throws rainbows on the wall. I've watched those rainbows for 3 years now, and it never gets old. They both stared at me like I'd started speaking in tongues. My quilting room, I continued, gesturing down the hall. I'm working on a double wedding ring pattern for the library fundraiser, each piece cut by hand, precision work that requires absolute quiet and concentration. Your content studio? Sienna? That's where I create actual things with my hands. Mum? Nathan started, but I wasn't finished. My kitchen routine: coffee at 6, breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. I meal prep on Sundays, label everything in the freezer. I know it seems rigid to you, but it's mine. This life I've built, it's mine. Sienna rolled her eyes. God, we get it. Your house. Your rules. Very mature? Actually, I said, a strange calm settling over me. It is my house. My name on the deed. My mortgage paid off 2 years early by taking every extra shift, eating ramen when you were at sleepovers. Nathan. So I could put another $50 toward the principal. This house isn't just where I live. It's what I earned. Nathan set down my water bottle with excessive care. Fine. We'll stay somewhere else. But don't expect us to rush back here for Sunday dinners or holidays. Sienna's right, you've become selfish. They gathered their suitcases with the theatrical efficiency of the deeply offended. Sienna muttered something about toxic behavior and boundary issues, which was rich, considering she'd literally invaded my home without permission. Nathan wouldn't meet my eyes, his jaw set in that stubborn line that was pure Richard, though Richard would never have treated his mother this way. At the door, Sienna turned back. You know, Maggie, one day you're going to need us. When you're older, frailer, unable to manage this big house alone, and we'll remember this moment. The threat hung in the air like smoke after they left, leaving me standing in my suddenly quiet living room. I walked to my reading chair, sank into its familiar embrace, and noticed the afternoon light catching the prism just right, even at this unusual hour. Tiny rainbows danced on the wall, defiant and beautiful. I thought about Sienna's words, older, frailer, alone. They were meant to frighten me, to make me rush after them with apologies and capitulation. But sitting there in my chair, in my house, surrounded by my hard-won peace, I felt something else entirely. Determination. If they thought this house was just walls and roof, if they believed my life was nothing but empty space waiting to be filled with their needs, if they imagined I'd cave to their emotional extortion, They knew nothing about Margaret Whittaker. I reached for my phone, scrolled through my contacts to a number I'd saved but never called. Barclay and Wren, attorneys at law. It was time to make some things official. The offices of Barclay and Wren occupied the second floor of a restored Victorian on Pearl Street, all exposed brick and modern efficiency wrapped in historic charm. I arrived at 9:30 sharp Monday morning, having spent the weekend researching my options and discovering I had more than I'd imagined. Mrs. Whittaker, the attorney, Patricia Wren, was younger than expected, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd won more battles than lost. Her handshake was firm, her office organized but lived in, law books mixed with family photos. You mentioned on the phone this was about property protection. I'd practiced this conversation during my morning walk, but sitting across from an actual attorney made it real. My son and his wife seem to believe my house is communal property. I need to ensure it remains mine alone, regardless of what happens to me. Patricia nodded, pulling out a legal pad. Tell me about your current ownership structure. Simple deed in my name only. Paid off 24 months ago. I handed her the folder I'd prepared: mortgage satisfaction documents, property tax receipts, insurance policies. My late husband passed before we bought this house. It's always been mine alone. Any promises made to your son about inheriting? Nothing written. Nothing specific verbally either, though I suppose he's made assumptions. I thought of Sienna's smirk, that casual certainty that my life's work was just their future asset. His wife certainly has. Patricia reviewed my documents with practiced efficiency, occasionally making notes. Colorado law gives you several options. A standard will, of course, but that can be contested and doesn't protect you while living. A trust would work, but involves more complexity. She looked up. Have you heard of an enhanced life estate deed? Sometimes called a Lady Bird deed. I hadn't, but I leaned forward, interested. It's perfect for situations like yours, she continued. You retain complete control during your lifetime. You can sell, mortgage, or modify the property without anyone's permission or knowledge. You designate beneficiaries who inherit automatically upon death. But here's the key: you can change those beneficiaries any time, and they have zero rights while you're alive. Zero rights, I repeated, savouring the words. None. They can't claim residency, can't demand access, can't even force you to maintain the property for their future benefit. And if someone's been problematic... She smiled slightly. You can remove them as beneficiary with a simple form, no explanation required. The relief was physical, like setting down a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. What about trespassing if they show up uninvited? Once the deed is filed, you have every right to enforce boundaries. We can also draft a formal no trespass notice if needed. Makes any unauthorized entry a criminal matter, family or not. I thought about Nathan's casual refrigerator raids, Sienna's assumptions about my spare room. Let's do both, the deed and the notice. Patricia's fingers flew across her keyboard. I'll need the beneficiary information for the initial deed. You can always change it later. I gave her the information for the library, where I volunteered they could use the donation if something happened to me. Nathan's name never crossed my lips. Smart choice for now, Patricia said, clearly reading between the lines. Keeps your options open but protected. Now, about the trespass notice, do you want it broad or specific? Specific. My son, Nathan Whittaker, and his wife, Sienna Blake Whittaker, are not authorized to enter my property without explicit written permission for each instance. The printer hummed to life, pages emerging with the weight of legal authority. Patricia walked me through each document: the enhanced life estate deed, the trespass notice, the filing requirements. The deed would be recorded with the county by end of business today. Official, binding, mine. "There's one more thing," Patricia said as I signed the last form. "This type of deed is excellent for your primary residence. But what about other assets, investments, savings, any other properties?" "Other properties?" I kept my expression neutral. But something must have shown, because Patricia tilted her head slightly. "I might have some investment properties," I said carefully. "Held through an LLC. Might." She smiled. "Mrs. Whitaker, asset protection only works when we protect all assets. If your son doesn't know about these properties—" "He doesn't. Then we should keep it that way while ensuring they're fully protected. The LLC structure is good, but we should review the operating agreement, make sure succession planning is clear, perhaps add another layer of protection." I nodded, making a mental note to bring those documents next time. The 4-unit building on Maple Harbor, purchased through Silver Cottonwood LLC 2 years ago, with every penny of my retirement savings and Richard's life insurance I'd finally invested wisely. The building where Nathan and Sienna currently lived, paying rent to what they thought was a corporate landlord. "The filing fee is $350, Patricia said, sliding the invoice across. "The peace of mind is priceless." I wrote the check without hesitation. $350 to ensure my home remained mine, to establish boundaries that couldn't be crossed with manipulation or guilt. Cheap at twice the price. Walking back to my car, documents tucked safely in my bag, I felt something shift inside me. Not just the legal status of my property, but something fundamental about how I moved through the world. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I wasn't playing defense. I was taking control. The September sun was bright, making the aspen leaves glow gold against the mountain backdrop. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at the copies of the filed documents, the embossed seal of the county clerk, the formal language establishing my absolute dominion over my own life. My phone buzzed. Nathan. I let it go to voicemail, then listened. "Mum, Sienna's still upset about Thursday. Maybe we could come for dinner Sunday, talk things through like adults. You're being really unreasonable about this whole thing." I deleted the message without responding. Sunday. I'd be quilting in my former spare room, working on that double wedding ring pattern in blessed silence. And if they showed up uninvited, well, I had a no trespass notice with their names on it and the sheriff's department on speed dial. The drive home felt different. The house, when I pulled into the driveway, looked different too. Not just mine by circumstance or economics, but mine by law, by right, by choice. Unassailable. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my reading chair, watching the afternoon light play through the prism. Tomorrow, I'd call Patricia back about the LLC properties. There were lease violations to document, HOA complaints to file, inspection reports to request. Sienna had told me to thank the real owner. Soon enough, I would do exactly that. The storage unit combination was muscle memory by now. 31-7-42. Inside, behind boxes of Christmas decorations and Richard's old golf clubs, sat a filing cabinet I visited quarterly. The papers inside represented my greatest secret and, as it turned out, my perfect leverage. Silver Cottonwood LLC. Formed 2 years ago, when I'd finally taken the plunge with money I'd saved for 30 years. The 4-unit building on Maple Harbour had been a foreclosure, sitting sad and neglected until the county auction. Nobody else had wanted it too much work. They said, too many code violations. But I'd seen potential, and more importantly, I'd seen the numbers. Unit 2B, second floor, corner unit with mountain views, currently leased to Nathan and Sienna Whitaker for $1,800 a month. Below market rate because the property manager, who didn't know the tenants were my family, had been instructed to price it attractively for stable, long-term tenants. I spread the papers across my dining room table, the LLC operating agreement, the lease agreements, the property management contract with Greenway Associates. Everything clean, professional, arm's length. Nathan paid rent to Greenway, who deposited it into Silver Cottonwood's account, minus their 10% fee. He'd never questioned who owned the building, never looked up the LLC. Why would he? It was just another corporate landlord in a city full of them. But Sienna's recent Instagram posts had changed everything. Renovation begins, with photos of walls being demolished, making our space ours, with unauthorized fixtures being installed. Future Airbnb vibes, with floor plans that definitely weren't approved by any landlord. I pulled up the posts on my tablet, screenshots already saved with timestamps. The lease was crystal clear, no alterations without written permission, no subletting, definitely no short-term rentals. The HOA bylaws for the building were even stricter. Any Airbnb activity triggered immediate fines of $500 per day. My phone rang. Patricia Wren. Margaret, I've reviewed the LLC documents you sent. Solid structure. But I have a question. Does your property management company know these are your relatives? No. And I'd like to keep it that way. Smart. Maintains the legal separation. Now, about these lease violations you've documented. They're extensive. I flipped through my printouts. Unauthorized demolition, structural changes without permits, announced intention to violate the no subletting clause. The property manager sent them a warning last month about noise complaints from neighbors. They ignored it. Perfect documentation. You could issue a notice to cure or quit immediately. But there's something else. Patricia paused. I did a permit search on the address. There's nothing filed for any renovation work. My pulse quickened. Nothing. 0 permits, which means any structural work they're doing is illegal. The city takes that seriously, especially in multi-unit buildings. One call to the building department would trigger an inspection. I finished, pieces clicking together in my mind. Exactly. And inspectors who find unpermitted work issue stop work orders, fines, and require everything to be brought up to code at the owner's expense. Though in this case, since it's unpermitted work by tenants, they'd be liable for all costs and penalties. I felt a smile forming, probably not unlike Sienna's smirk, but with better foundation. Margaret. Patricia's voice carried a note of admiration. You're in a remarkably powerful position. You hold all the cards, their housing, their legal liability, their financial exposure. The question is, how you want to play them. I looked at the photos again. Sienna posing with a sledgehammer, Nathan grinning behind her. They'd posted these publicly, proudly, assuming their landlord was some faceless corporation that would never notice or care. I want to do this properly, I said. Every notice, every filing, every step by the book. No shortcuts that could be challenged later. Then here's what I recommend. First, Have your property management company issue a formal notice to cure or quit based on the documented violations. 30 days to restore the unit or face eviction. Second, file a complaint with the building department about unpermitted work as the LLC owner. You have standing to request an inspection. Third, notify your HOA about the announced Airbnb plans so they can begin their own enforcement process. All of that through proper channels, not from me directly. Exactly. You remain the silent owner. Greenway Associates handles tenant issues. City inspectors handle permit violations. The HOA handles their bylaws. You're just a concerned property owner protecting your investment. I made notes as she spoke, my handwriting steady and clear. When can we start? I'll draft the notice to cure today. Send it to Greenway for delivery tomorrow. The city complaint can be filed online tonight. I'll walk you through it. The HOA notification should come from Greenway as well, maintaining that separation. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house, surrounded by evidence of my children's entitlement and my own careful planning. The 4-unit building had been my secret triumph. Proof that the woman who'd worked night shifts and clipped coupons could become something more. I'd never intended to use it against Nathan, had actually imagined someday gifting him the unit as a surprise. But that was before Thursday. Before you should thank the real owner. Before the casual cruelty of expecting me to be grateful for their invasion. I opened my laptop and navigated to the city's building department website. The complaint form was straightforward property address, nature of violation, evidence of unpermitted work. I uploaded Sienna's helpful Instagram documentation, each photo tagged with dates and descriptions of the illegal renovation in progress. The confirmation email came within minutes. Inspection scheduled for Wednesday between 8 and noon. The inspector would have full authority to stop all work, issue citations, and require permits for anything already done. Next, I called Greenway Associates. Tom, the property manager, was efficient and unsurprised. We've had 3 complaints from other tenants about construction noise, and these photos you sent, they knocked down a load-bearing wall. Appears so. Jesus. Okay. Notice to cure goes out tomorrow. Certified mail and posted on door. I'll copy the HOA board on everything. You want us to start eviction proceedings if they don't comply. Follow standard protocol. No special treatment either way. Got it. You know, in 15 years of property management, I've never seen tenants post evidence of their own lease violations on social media. It's almost impressive. Almost. I thought of Sienna's smirk, her certainty that rules didn't apply to people like them. By Wednesday afternoon, she'd learned differently. The September evening was cooling as I filed away the papers, locked the storage unit, and drove home. The house felt different now, not just protected by the enhanced deed, but weaponized by knowledge Nathan and Sienna didn't have. They thought they knew who held power in this family. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Tuesday morning brought the kind of crystalline Colorado sunshine that made everything feel sharper, clearer. I arranged my dining room like a war room, folders labeled and ordered, laptop charged, phone ready. The notice to cure would be delivered today. The city inspector would arrive tomorrow. All the pieces were moving, but they needed to converge perfectly. At 10:15, my phone buzzed. Tom from Greenway. Notice delivered and posted. Tenant Sienna Whitaker signed for it. She seemed upset. Thank you, Tom. Please document everything. Already done? Photos of the posted notice? Signature confirmation? Timestamp? We're covered. I poured myself another cup of tea and opened my laptop to check the city's inspection schedule. Still confirmed for Wednesday morning. Then, on impulse, I checked Sienna's Instagram, her latest post, from 20 minutes ago, dealing with corporate landlord BS. They have no idea who they're messing with. Nathan's got connections at City Hall. This will be sorted by tomorrow. Connections at City Hall. I actually laughed, startling myself with the sound. Nathan's connection was a guy from his softball team who worked in parking enforcement. But let them think they had influence. It would make Wednesday's reality check even more effective. My phone rang. Nathan. Mum, we need to talk. Hello, Nathan. Did you have something to do with this notice? It's from our property management company, but the timing is suspicious. The accusation was so absurd, I almost admired it. How would I have anything to do with your rental situation? I don't even know where exactly you live these days. The lie came smoothly, necessarily. It's just weird. Okay, right after our argument. Suddenly, our landlord has issues with renovations we've been posting about for weeks. Perhaps, I said carefully. Posting evidence of lease violations on social media wasn't your wisest decision. Sienna says, Nathan, I have to go. Library board meeting. Another lie, but cleaner than the truth. After hanging up, I made a decision. The plan needed one more element, a face-to-face confrontation where all the pieces would come together. I texted Nathan, Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. Both of you. We need to clear the air properly. His response was immediate. Finally. Thank you for being reasonable. Reasonable. I looked at my war room table, at the precisely ordered documents that would systematically dismantle their entitlement. Yes, I was being very reasonable indeed. Wednesday arrived grey and promising rain. I stationed myself at the coffee shop across from the Maple Harbour building by 7:45, newspaper prop in hand, watching. The city inspector's van pulled up at 8:20. Blue uniform, clipboard, official bearing. He walked directly to Unit 2B, 20 minutes later. My phone exploded with texts from Nathan, Inspector here. Stop work order. 5,000 in fines. WTF is happening. I didn't respond. Sienna's Instagram story, updated in real time, told me everything shaky video of red stop work orders being posted. Angry captions about abuse of power. Threats to sue everyone involved. Then, quieter posts about needing to find contractors to fix some permit issues. Tom called at noon. Inspector found 8 code violations. Stop work order posted. Fines issued. And here's the kicker, they have to restore the wall they demolished before any new permits can be pulled. That's probably 15,000 minimum. And if they don't, lease violation, immediate grounds for eviction. Plus, the city can pursue criminal charges for endangering other tenants with unpermitted structural changes. The coffee shop was playing jazz, soft and complicated. I sat with this information, feeling its weight and possibility. Sunday dinner was 4 days away. Time enough for them to stew in the consequences, to scramble for solutions, to realize their connections were worthless. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of ignored calls and increasingly desperate texts. Nathan tried anger. This is probably illegal. Bargaining. Can we talk about this like adults? And finally pleading, Mom, please, we need help. Sienna posted nothing after Wednesday. Her Instagram story expired and not renewed. Saturday afternoon. I prepared for Sunday's dinner with methodical care. The good china, the linen napkins, everything proper and correct. The 3 folders, house deed, LLC documents, and violation notices waited in the sidebar, out of sight, but ready. I also made a call to Patricia Wren. I want you on standby Sunday evening. If they refuse to leave when asked, I need immediate legal backup. You're expecting trouble? I'm expecting desperation. Same thing, really. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. I spent it in my reading chair, watching the cardinals and planning my words. This wasn't about cruelty or revenge, I told myself. This was about establishing, once and for all, that Margaret Whittaker was not a resource to be exploited, but a person to be respected. At 4 o'clock, I started cooking. Pot roast. Nathan's favourite, let no one say I was heartless. Mashed potatoes, green beans, the full production. The familiar ritual of cooking calmed my nerves, gave my hands something to do while my mind ran through scenarios. At 5, I set the table, placing the folders strategically in the sidebar drawer. The enhanced life estate deed on top, then the LLC operating agreement, then the violation notices, a progression of revelations, each more devastating than the last. At 5:30, I opened a bottle of wine, the good Malbec I'd been saving. I poured myself a glass and sat in my reading chair, watching the sunset paint the mountains pink and gold. My phone buzzed. Nathan. On our way. Thank you for this. I didn't respond. There would be time enough for words when they arrived. For now, I sat in my house legally, irrevocably, absolutely mine, and waited for my son and his wife to discover who really held the power they'd assumed was theirs by right. The stage was set. The documents were ready. In 30 minutes, Sienna would learn exactly who she should have been thanking all along. They arrived at 6:05, Nathan carrying a bottle of wine like a peace offering, Sienna clutching her phone like armor. She'd dressed down jeans and a sweater instead of her usual Instagram-ready outfits. The construction dust in her hair suggested they'd come straight from trying to deal with their apartment disaster. "Mom," Nathan said, kissing my cheek perfunctorily. "Thanks for this." "Maggie," Sienna managed, her usual smirk replaced by something tighter, more calculated. I served dinner with practiced efficiency, letting them fill the silence with small talk about weather, traffic, anything but the elephant crushing the room. Nathan ate mechanically. Sienna pushed food around her plate, that phone never leaving her grip. Finally, over coffee and the apple pie I'd made that morning, Nathan cracked. "Mom, we're in trouble." "Oh." I kept my voice neutral, pouring cream into my coffee with steady hands. "Our landlord is being completely unreasonable. They're saying we violated our lease, but we were just making improvements. Now there's thousands in fines, and we have to restore everything or face eviction." "That does sound troublesome." I took a sip, letting the silence stretch. Sienna's composure finally snapped. "It's more than troublesome. It's targeted harassment. The timing is too convenient right after our argument with you." "Interesting theory," I said, "though I'm not sure how I could influence your corporate landlord." "That's what I told her," Nathan said quickly. "Mom, we were wondering, we need about $20,000 to fix everything and pay the fines. Could you—" "No." The word dropped like a stone in still water. Nathan blinked. "You haven't even heard—" "I heard. You want $20,000 to fix mistakes you made by violating a lease you signed?" "No." Sienna leaned forward, and there it was, that smirk, despite everything. "You know, Maggie, this house is awfully big for one person, and Nathan is your only heir. Maybe instead of being difficult, you should be grateful we even want to maintain a relationship with you. Grateful, I repeated, standing slowly. You think I should be grateful? I walked to the sidebar, pulled out the first folder. Let's talk about gratitude, shall we? The enhanced life estate deed slid across the table toward them. Nathan picked it up, frowning as he read. His face went pale. Mum, what is this? That's the deed to this house. Notice the terms: I retain full control until death, with the right to exclude anyone I choose. And see the beneficiary line, the Cedar Ridge Public Library. Not you. Nathan. Not anymore. You can't, Sienna started. I can, and I did. Filed with the county on Monday. I pulled out the second document. There's also this, a formal no trespass notice. Either of you show up here without written permission. It's criminal trespass. Nathan's hands shook holding the paper. Mom, this is crazy. We're family. Family, I said, pulling out the final folder. Who assumed my home was theirs to invade? Who thought my life was just empty space waiting to serve their needs? Speaking of which, Sienna, you said something interesting last week. You told me I should thank the real owner. She lifted her chin, defiance flickering despite their situation. Well, Nathan will inherit eventually, whatever papers you file. So yes, you should. The real owner. I opened the last folder, laying out the LLC documents like playing cards. Silver Cottonwood LLC, established 2 years ago. Sole member Margaret Whitaker, owner of a 4-unit building on Maple Harbor Drive. The silence was complete. Sienna's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Nathan stared at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. Unit 2B, I continued conversationally. Nice corner unit, mountain views. Currently leased to Nathan and Sienna Whitaker for $1,800 a month, though I understand the tenants are facing some compliance issues. You're our landlord. Nathan's voice cracked like he was 15 again. I'm your landlord. Have been for 2 years. Every rent check you've written, every maintenance request you've submitted, every lease renewal you've signed, all went through my LLC. Sienna had gone grey. The renovations. The illegal renovations. The ones you posted all over social media. The ones that violated multiple lease terms and city codes. I refilled my coffee cup with perfect calm. Yes, those would be my problem as the owner, except you did them without permission, making them your financial and legal responsibility. You set us up, Nathan said, but it was weak, defeated. I invested in real estate. You decided to destroy that real estate while bragging about it online. How is that my fault? Sienna stood abruptly. This is illegal. Fraud. Hiding ownership. Completely legal. Ask any lawyer. LLCs exist specifically to separate personal from business assets. I had no obligation to disclose ownership, especially since you never asked. You just assumed some faceless corporation owned the building and acted accordingly. Mom, Nathan tried again. We're family. How could you? How could I, protect my investments, maintain professional boundaries, expect tenants to honor their legal agreements? I met his eyes directly. Or how could I dare to exist as something other than your safety net? The dining room felt smaller, the air thicker. Sienna sank back into her chair, finally releasing that phone. Nathan pushed the papers around. as if rearranging them might change their meaning. "The 20,000, he said quietly. "We don't have it." "Then I suggest you figure it out. Take out a loan. Sell something. Get a second job. The same things any tenant would have to do when facing the consequences of their actions." "You're really going to evict your own son?" Sienna's voice had lost all its edge. "I'm going to follow the same procedures I would with any tenant who destroyed my property. 30 days to cure the violations or vacate. The property management company will handle everything. I won't be involved in the process." I stood, began clearing plates with mechanical precision. They sat, frozen, surrounded by the wreckage of their assumptions. "You wanted me to thank the real owner," I said, stacking dishes in the sink. "So, thank you, Sienna, for the suggestion. It clarified everything." The doorbell rang at 7:45, cutting through the thick silence that had settled over the dining room. Nathan and Sienna exchanged panicked looks, the kind of raw fear I hadn't seen on my son's face since he was 17 and got caught with beer in his car. "Expecting someone," Sienna whispered, as if volume could change what was coming. I walked to the door with measured steps, knowing exactly who stood on the other side. Inspector David Chen. No. Wait. The inspector's name was David Martinez from the building department. I'd spoken to him briefly on Friday to confirm some details about the violations. "Good evening, Mr. Martinez. Thank you for coming on a Sunday." He was younger than his voice had suggested, maybe 40, with the kind of methodical bearing that came from years of dealing with people who thought building codes were suggestions. "Mrs. Whitaker, I have those additional documents you requested." I led him to the dining room where Nathan and Sienna sat, frozen. "This is Inspector Martinez from the City Building Department. He happened to have some follow-up regarding the Maple Harbor property." "Happened to—" Nathan's voice was hollow. Martinez opened his tablet. "All business. Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker, as the tenants who initiated unpermitted structural work, I need to inform you of additional findings. The wall you removed was not just load-bearing, but also a firewall between units. This upgrades the violation from a civil to a potential criminal matter." "Criminal?" Sienna's word came out strangled. "Reckless endangerment. You compromised the fire safety of 3 other units." He pulled out his phone, showing photos. "See this charring on the beam? That's from a fire in the building 12 years ago. That wall was the only thing that kept it from spreading to your unit. By removing it, you've exposed everyone to potentially fatal risk." Nathan stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "We didn't know. Ignorance isn't a defense. That's why permits exist. Licensed contractors would have known immediately." Martinez made notes on his tablet. "The city attorney will decide whether to pursue criminal charges. Meanwhile, the stop work order remains. And I'm adding an emergency restoration requirement. You have 72 hours to have a licensed contractor begin rebuilding that wall, or we condemn the unit." 72 hours. Nathan ran his hands through his hair. "It's Sunday night. How are we supposed to—" "That's your problem to solve." Martinez turned to me. "Mrs. Whitaker, as the property owner, you have the right to pursue civil damages beyond the lease violations. The contractor I sent to assess the damage estimated 40,000 in necessary repairs to restore proper fire safety." 40,000, Sienna repeated, sinking lower in her chair. "That's if you start immediately. Every day of delay adds penalties. The HOA is also filing separately. They're claiming damage to common areas from debris disposal. He closed his tablet. I'll email the full report tonight. The criminal referral will be processed Monday morning. I walked him to the door, thanking him quietly. When I returned, Nathan was on his phone, frantically searching for contractors. Sienna stared at the wall like she could will it to disappear. "Mom," Nathan said without looking up. "I'm calling every contractor in my network. They're all saying the same thing. Emergency firewall restoration starts at $25,000, cash up front." "Your network," I said, sitting back down. "The same connections who were going to fix this at City Hall." His flush told me everything. "That was just," Sienna thought. "I thought your friend could help," Sienna snapped, life flooding back into her voice. "How was I supposed to know your mother was orchestrating all this?" "Orchestrating?" I laughed, short and sharp. "I didn't make you tear down a wall. I didn't force you to ignore permits. I didn't post your crimes on Instagram. You orchestrated this yourselves." "But you knew." Nathan's desperation was morphing into anger. "You knew we were your tenants. And you let us. Let you. What follow the same rules as every other tenant, face the same consequences anyone else would." I pulled out my phone. "Should I call Tom from Greenway? Tell him to give you special treatment because you're family. Wouldn't that be fraud?" "Sienna, isn't that what you just accused me of?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The woman who always had a cutting remark, a dismissive smirk, a clever manipulation silenced by her own logic. My phone buzzed. Tom from Greenway. "HOA president wants emergency meeting tomorrow. They're considering a special assessment against Unit 2B for emergency repairs to common areas. Could be another 10K? I showed them the text. Nathan's phone slipped from his numb fingers, clattering on the table. 50,000 total, he whispered. "Mum? We don't have 50,000. We don't even have 5,000. Then you'd better figure it out fast. 72 hours. Inspector Martinez said. That's Wednesday at 8 p.m. Sienna suddenly laughed high, brittle, edged with hysteria. "You're enjoying this, your own son, and you're enjoying watching us squirm." "Enjoying?" I stood, looking down at them. I worked night shifts for 16 years. My hands are permanently damaged from repetitive motion. My back never stops aching. I haven't had a full night's sleep since 1982. Every dollar I saved went to raising Nathan, educating him, giving him opportunities I never had. And when I finally had something of my own, you decided you were entitled to it. So no, I'm not enjoying this, but I'm not apologizing for it either. "We could lose everything," Nathan said. "Our home, our savings paying these fines, maybe even jail time. Doesn't that matter to you? Your home, the one you destroyed, your savings that you never offered to share when I was eating ramen to pay for your college, your freedom that you used to invade mine." I gathered the papers, slowly, deliberately. "Every consequence you're facing, you earned." The doorbell rang again. This time, I wasn't expecting it. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit holding an envelope. "Process server," he announced when I opened the door. "I'm looking for Nathan and Sienna Whitaker." Behind me, I heard chairs scraping, feet running toward the back door. But I'd locked it earlier. Of course. Where could they run anyway? "They're here," I said, stepping aside. The server was efficient. "Nathan Whitaker." You're being served with a civil complaint from the Maple Harbor Homeowners Association, Sienna Blake Whitaker. Same. You have 30 days to respond. He left them holding the papers like live grenades. I read over Nathan's shoulder emergency injunction, damages, legal fees. The HOA wasn't playing around. You knew, Sienna said, but all the fight had drained from her voice. You knew he was coming. I knew the HOA was meeting in emergency session. I knew they took property damage seriously. I knew actions have consequences. I looked at them both. These two people who'd assumed my world revolved around their needs. The question is, why didn't you? The dining room had become a courtroom, and I was both judge and executioner. Nathan still clutched the HOA papers while Sienna stared at nothing, her phone dark and forgotten on the table. The woman who documented everything, who lived her life in public posts and stories, had finally run out of content. I walked to the sidebar one last time, pulling out 2 final envelopes I'd prepared that afternoon. The weight of them felt appropriate, not heavy, but substantial. Definitive. Before you leave, I said, placing them on the table with deliberate precision. There are 2 more items. Nathan's hand shook as he reached for the first envelope. What now? What else could you possibly... Open it. Inside was the notice of trespass I'd had Patricia prepare, crisp and official with the county seal. Nathan read it aloud, his voice breaking. Margaret Whitaker hereby notifies Nathan Whitaker and Sienna Blake Whitaker that they are forbidden from entering the property at Cedar Ridge without express written permission for each instance. Violation will result in immediate law enforcement response. You're banning us from your home. Sienna's whisper barely carried across the table. I'm establishing boundaries, something I should have done years ago. I pushed the second envelope toward them. This one's from Silver Cottonwood LLC. Nathan didn't move to open it, so I did it for him, laying out the document like a dealer showing cards. Notice to quit for cause. 30 days to vacate Unit 2B due to multiple lease violations, property damage, and breach of contract. The property management company will handle any questions. 30 days. Nathan repeated mechanically. Where are we supposed to go? That's no longer my concern. You're adults who make adult choices. Find an apartment you haven't destroyed. Sign a lease you'll actually honor. Live within your means. Revolutionary concepts. I know. Sienna suddenly stood, her chair scraping against the hardwood I'd refinished myself 3 summers ago. You want us to beg? Is that it? You want to see us grovel? No, I said simply. I want you to leave. Mom, Nathan started, but I raised my hand. You said something interesting last week. Sienna, you said I should thank the real owner. I looked at her directly, this woman who'd tried to colonize my life like it was vacant land. You were right. I stood straighter, feeling every one of my 66 years not as weight, but as armor, forged in night shifts and single motherhood and small savings accumulated over decades. Thank you, Margaret Whitaker, I said clearly, deliberately. Thank you for working yourself to exhaustion to buy this house. Thank you for every sacrifice that built this life. Thank you for being smart enough to protect what you earned. And thank you for finally standing up for yourself. Sienna's face drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. The smirk that had been her signature, her weapon, her mask, it was gone, replaced by the naked shock of someone who'd just realized they'd been playing checkers while their opponent had been playing chess. You planned this, she said. But it wasn't an accusation anymore. It was almost admiration. From the moment I said those words. No, I corrected. I planned this from the moment I realized you both saw me not as a person, but as a resource. The house you could claim, the free childcare you could assume, the safety net you could take for granted. Your words just clarified what I needed to do. Nathan stood slowly, like an old man, though he was only 42. My son, whom I'd raised alone, whom I'd sacrificed everything for, looked at me like I was a stranger. I don't know you, he said. No, I agreed. You don't. You know the mother who always said yes, who always made room, who always put herself last. That woman retired last Thursday at approximately 4:15 p.m., when your wife stood in my home and told me to be grateful for the invasion. I walked to the front door and opened it. The September evening was cool, autumn already claiming the edges of summer. Your 72 hours to secure a contractor starts now. I suggest you don't waste time. They gathered themselves slowly: phones, papers, the HOA lawsuit, the eviction notice. The wine Nathan had brought sat unopened on the counter, a peace offering for a war he hadn't known he'd already lost. At the door, Nathan turned back one last time. Mum, this isn't over. Yes, I said quietly. It is. Sienna paused beside him, and for a moment, the mask fully dropped. The real owner, she said. Not a question, but a statement. It was always you. Every lease payment you made, every complaint you filed, every assumption you made about corporate landlords not caring. Yes, it was always me. Operating at arm's length, professionally, legally. The way business should be conducted, even with family. Especially with family. They left without another word. I watched them walk to their car, the BMW they'd bought last year, while I was driving my 12-year-old Honda. Sienna's shoulders were shaking. Nathan's were rigid. They sat in the driveway for 5 minutes before finally driving away. I closed the door, locked it, and stood in my foyer listening to the profound silence of a house that was truly, legally, unassailably mine. No one could enter without permission. No one could claim rights they hadn't earned. No one could mistake my kindness for weakness again. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in my reading chair, the evening light casting those familiar rainbows through the prism. Tomorrow. There would be consequences, Nathan calling relatives, Sienna posting some version of events that made them victims, family members choosing sides. Let them. I had my house, my peace, and something I'd lost somewhere along the way, my self-respect. The last rainbow faded as the sun set behind the mountains. I thought about Sienna's face when I'd thanked myself. That moment when she understood that the power she'd assumed was Nathan's by inheritance and hers by marriage had always been an illusion. The real owner had been invisible to her because she'd never imagined a woman like me could be anything more than a resource to exploit. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Wren. Heard the inspector visited. Everything go as planned. I typed back, perfectly. The real owner has been properly thanked. Her response was immediate. A house and a crown. Yes, that felt about right. At 66, I'd finally learned that setting boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary. That protecting what you've earned isn't cruel, it's smart. And that sometimes, the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served with proper documentation and legal precedent. I raised my teacup to the empty room, to the quiet evening, to the woman I'd finally become. Thank you, Margaret Whittaker, I said once more. Thank you for everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Margaret's situation? Let me know in the comments.